pastor here at First Methodist Church of Moorestown, and we are incredibly grateful that you are here for our third annual health fair. I know I'm grateful the vendors who are here. We have quite a few. A very exciting time in the fellowship hall. That will be an opportunity for you to have more information and to receive resources and to have conversation with people that span a wide range of healthcare needs of mind, body, and spirit. Amen? And I'm also grateful for all the presenters who are leading the different workshops and all that we have got going on. Friends, First Methodist Church is an open and welcoming congregation. We're grateful that you're here. We're grateful for the opportunity to offer times like this for us to gather, to grow and to be strengthened, to live healthy and fulfilling lives. Amen? Amen, amen. So friends, at the end of the session, before you depart, there'll be more instructions as you're going to be heading into the sessions that you've either signed up for, or if you've just walked in, you can get support with the registration that's back here. If you have not yet received one of our brochures, programs for the entire morning, they will be coming and also available at the end of this plenary session. Please note that there are also going to be people like me, members of the church, who are going to be out and about, standing in the hallways. So if you feel you need help on getting where you need to go, do not hesitate to ask. I'm going to be roaming and schmoozing all around. So there's people to help guide you in the complex of our building so you can, again, get to where you need to go. Restrooms, again, there's one right out here, and there's several just around the corner where you came in, some of you. So you'd go to the right and then to the left, and the restrooms for men and women are right there, and there's a single unisex bathroom right here. But what I'd love to be able to do now is just to pause and spend an opportunity to welcome and introduce our plenary speaker this morning. Reverend Jessica Campbell is a current elder in the United Methodist Church of our conference, and she's serving at the amazing Montgomery United Methodist Church. What township is that considered in? It's in Montgomery, yes, about 50 minutes north of here, but we're grateful for her leadership there. But most importantly, Pastor Jess was on staff here for 3 years on staff, and we had the opportunity to work together. Reverend Campbell helped launch this initiative. Her and a strong team of lay leadership came together and developed, saying, this is what our community needs. This is what we want to offer the cares that are provided of health and well-being of mind, body, and spirit. So as one of our people who helped begin this, we're grateful to have you here. Pastor Jess has much passion. She has much energy. She has much hope for people to become well of mind, body, and spirit. It's a part of who she is and everything that she does as a clergywoman. So friends, will you please welcome our plenary speaker, Reverend Jessica Campbell.
All right, the good news is I didn't cry. And I can tell Gina's been using this because it's much taller than I am. There we go. Okay. Friends, it is in fact very good to be with you all. It is a joy to be here among familiar faces and friendly faces and a number of new faces as well. Just out of curiosity, if this is your third time, if you've come to all 3 health fairs, would you raise your hand? Wow. And if this is your second health fair, would you raise your hand? And if you are brand new and it's your very first time here, okay, very good. Well, welcome. Welcome. So today, in the time that we have together, I have to warn you, you all are my guinea pigs, because this is a topic that I have become very passionate about, and I have studied quite a bit about, but I have not shared with anyone. And so I have put together a lecture, and I am hoping that as I deliver it for the first time, that it lands well, and I ask for your grace if it doesn't. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about why I became interested in spiritual wellness, what I've learned, and then some of the how-to practices of what spiritual wellness looks like. So let me get started with the why. And really my story begins with the question, what about the polar bears? Glennon Doyle, in her book Untamed, tells this wonderful story about her daughter being at story time and hearing about the hungry polar bears looking for food and not finding any. At the end of the book, the teacher announces that it's time for recess, and all the kids around her hop up and go get their coats on to head outside. But her daughter sat there with wide, tear-filled eyes and yelled out, "Well, what about the polar bears?" The author goes on and tells this beautiful story about how some people inherently just operate with big emotions. And reading that chapter was like looking in a mirror and giving me words to describe myself that I never before had. Because as a kid, I also had big, big emotions. When a kid got hurt on the playground, I stayed up all night worried about them. When a classmate lost their parent, I grieved for weeks. I did not want to be like this, and I didn't know that everyone else wasn't like this. And it was in a time and in a place where you just dealt with it. And really, I could not deal with it well. And my family didn't know how to deal with me and my big emotions, and so I had to find a way to cope, and my drug of choice was food. I can remember in my early teen years, I stood feeling all the feels and desperate for consolation, and I stood in my parents' garage at their outside freezer. And I opened up a box of raw cookie dough. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I stood there eating one piece of raw cookie dough after another until my stomach was in so much pain that the emotional pain disappeared. This sort of binge eating became my coping mechanism until I hit a crisis point in my 30s when my doctor told me that I was on a path to die young. I had young kids at the time, and he told me that if I continued to carry the 420 pounds that my body was carrying, that I would not live to see my kids reach adulthood. I wasn't ready to give up on life, and I wasn't ready to give up my kids. And so I decided to have bariatric surgery and make significant changes. So fast forward a few years, I've lost and kept off 150 pounds. I have a ways to go, but I eat better today, and I move more than ever before. I am in no way a model for physical health, but the major danger zone was cleared away. Through it all, I knew that I needed to address my big emotions and my unhealthy coping mechanisms. And so I entered counseling, and I was diagnosed and treated for mild depression. The medication that I still take today does help regulate some of those big emotions and those big lows that I would feel. And in-person talk therapy has helped me cope with a lot of the deep emotions I feel. But even through it all, as I addressed my physical wellness, as I was addressing my mental wellness, I knew something was still missing. And I have to admit to you all that there are times where I can just be incredibly dense. Because growing up, I heard all the time that wellness included body, mind, and soul, sometimes spirit. Those three things were thrown out all the time, and I knew I was actively working on my mental well-being. I was actively working on my physical well-being, but I knew that something was still missing. I had the big emotions, and it could lead me to a place where I could sing on a Sunday morning, "It is well with my soul." But I knew interior and the inside, it actually was not. And then I watched a TV series with my fiance called The Blue Zone. Remember The Blue Zone? And this led me into what I want to talk about with you all today, and into the what about what spiritual health is, what it is not, and why I think it matters. The Blue Zone research was led by National Geographic journalist Dan Buettner. And what they did is they identified 5 regions in the world where people live significantly longer and healthier lives. These 5 regions, known as the Blue Zones, are in Japan, Italy, Costa Rica, Greece, and a Seventh-day Adventist community in California. And one of the key things that they found in all of these communities is that they were engaged in spiritual or religious practices. Spiritual or religious practices. And here's just a little bit about what they found. First, they found that spiritual wellness extends the general lifespan. For example, in California, the Seventh-day Adventists live 7 to 10 years longer than the average American. 7 to 10 years longer than the average American. I don't know about you, but if you could point me in the direction of living 10 years longer than the average, I would want to pay attention. Their lifestyle includes weekly Sabbath rest. I think you've heard about that here in the church. It includes healthy diets and incredibly strong community ties. In 2016, there was a research study done in Harvard, and they found that women who attend religious services are 33% less likely to die during their study time. So in addition to a longer lifespan, they also discovered that people who are spiritually well have reduced stress and lower inflammation. Medical research is showing over and over again that religious participation, spiritual participation, is linked to lower levels of stress hormone cortisol, which contributes to heart disease, high blood pressure, inflammation-related diseases. And it's mostly because of this rhythm of rest and renewal. How many of us are in agreement that we live in a time and place where we are under chronic stress? And yet it is practices of spirituality that remove us from those stressful seasons and help us lower our stress levels and lower our inflammation. So longer lives reduce stress, and they're finding throughout these studies that the increase in social connection and purpose deeply impacts people's lives and their perspective on their calling. Coming out of the pandemic, I don't know if you've had a chance to read any of these studies, but they are now discovering that loneliness, the feelings of loneliness, are as unhealthy for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, if you see someone smoking 15 cigarettes a day, you know that is an unhealthy practice. It is being equivalent now to feelings of loneliness. And they're discovering that out of the pandemic, and what a gift it is out of such a horrible season to now have people paying attention to what loneliness does to our bodies. And so churches, faith communities, spiritual practices help create this social connection in which we don't experience loneliness to the same degree. I get asked as a pastor all the time why people can't just experience the divine out in nature. And my response is the same every single time. You absolutely can experience the divine out in nature. There is something incredibly powerful about a sunrise or a beautiful view. But at the same time, nature is not going to hold your hand when you're going through a difficult season. And nature is not going to bring you a casserole when you are at your weakest point. So I believe that they can both be true, but there is something powerful about the social connections that spiritual communities can offer. So in addition to a longer life, a reduced stress, a purpose, and social connection, the last thing that I wanted to point out is that spiritually healthy people tend to live more ethical and healthy lifestyles. And this has been studied again throughout the world, and there have been research studies particularly done on this topic by the Mayo Clinic in 2012. And they found that as people had ethical and healthier lifestyles, they tended to live longer for a variety of reasons, but mostly because of acts of moderation, practices of gratitude, and then participating in acts of service where you're making an impact beyond yourself and you're knowing that you're contributing in positive ways to the community. So, you can hear the benefits of spiritual wellness, right? Are you with me? You can hear that they bring good, tangible results to our life. So in hearing all of this, my immediate reaction was to turn to my non-religious, non-church-going fiance and say, "Ha! See, going to church is good for you." But then I really internalized this research, and I asked myself, if spiritual and religious engagement is so good for me, why don't I hear more about it in our culture? Please tell me you're with me in agreeing that we are bombarded with ads for the latest drugs to make us better. We are bombarded with gym membership, offers. We are bombarded with things to stay physically active and well. And they matter. I'm not saying they don't, but we are constantly hearing about the needs for our physical health. More recently, we are also hearing about the needs to address our mental health. There are counseling crisis hotlines. There are therapists and psychiatrists that people are being encouraged to go to when in need. Schools have counseling systems and can address crisis moments for kids. And our mental health does matter, and the resources are more and more available to us. So why don't I hear much then about spiritual health in our culture? Let me ask you, when is the last time someone asked you, checked in with you, about the state of your spiritual wellness? When's the last time someone asked you, how is it with your soul? I don't know about you, but the answer for me was really never. I don't remember anyone ever asking me or caring about that part of my well-being. And so when I asked myself this question, I started to panic. I am a professional. I've been a pastor for 21 years, and this is my gig. This is my wheelhouse. This is my world. But to my surprise, I really had never given much thought about my own spiritual wellness or the spiritual wellness of my faith communities. I know a lot about the Bible, and I try to convey it and teach what I know. I know a lot about how to say the right prayers and be present with people in their times of need. And I can say prayers that sound really nice, but at the end of the day, when it was just me and the Creator, what was the state of my soul in my prayer life? So to help me discern this, I started working with a spiritual director. And for me, I had to first decide what spiritual health meant. And so with that, I wanted to check and see how I was doing on time. With that, I started with what is spiritual health not. So let me start there with all of you. I'm going to start with what spiritual health is not, and then we'll move into what spiritual health is. A lot of times people have the misconception that spiritual health means religious belief or religious practices, like meditation or prayer. And while that can be a part of spiritual health, I think it is much broader than that. So spiritual health for me is not just a religious belief or practice. I hate to be the one to call people out on this, but I have experienced in my years of ministry that people can attend church every single Sunday and still not be spiritually well. They may still not have the tools that they need to be spiritually well and with that broader sense of who and what they believe. So it's not just about spiritual belief or practices. I also don't think it's simply meditation or mindfulness. I think meditation and mindfulness are excellent tools for well-being, but they are practices, and spiritual health is much more all-encompassing. It's like, to me, saying eating an apple a day means that you are nutritionally whole. Nope, it might be a good practice, but there's a whole rest of the diet that you have to look at, right? And spiritual health is not just about feeling good all the time. I see pictures of, that happy yoga practitioner who seems to be in a state of peace 24/7. And while that sounds magical to me, I also know that it is not real life. And so a constant state of peace and happiness is not what spiritual health means. For me, spiritual health acknowledges that we go through times of struggle and doubt, and we have difficult emotions like grief and loss. But if we are spiritually well, we have a framework to navigate those times with hope and with resilience. Okay, so that for me is what spiritual health is not. Let me go into what I think spiritual health is. At its core, I believe that spiritual health is how we understand and connect to something beyond ourselves. One, we have a sense of meaning and purpose. I think people with a strong spiritual sense of well-being understand their why in life. I had to really work at my own why, and it was actually one of our previous bishops, Bishop Devidar, who helped me discern this. My why is to bring people together in love. I love to bring people together. I've been in my new neighborhood for 6 months, and I'm the one now planning the block party because I just inherently want to bring people together, and I see deep value in that. And that has become my why. So finding your sense of meaning and purpose. When I think about my specific Christian tradition and spiritual wellness, I think John Wesley, the founder of our denomination, would say that our why as a collective community is to love God and serve others. Would you agree with that? Yeah, that would be our collective why. Okay, so spiritually well health, you have a sense of meaning and purpose. You also have a deep connection. Let me explain. One, you have a connection to yourself. You understand yourself, you understand your growth, you understand what integrity means for you, you understand what your unique gifts are, what your unique talents are, and what your unique purpose is. Additionally, you have a powerful connection with others. You build meaningful relationships, you foster empathy, and you engage in a community of some kind. So not only do you have a connection with yourself, but then you form connections with other people. And finally, a connection to something bigger than yourself. Some people might call it God. You might know it as divinity or something just larger than what exists in this world. Whatever you call that bigger entity, you have a connection that is constantly being renewed and reestablished to help you grow in connection with that larger divinity. And then lastly, I think spiritual health, in addition to connection and purpose and meaning, is an ability to see beyond the immediate circumstances, an ability to see a bigger picture. I think that this fosters hope and resilience in times of suffering. How many of us could use more of that right now? When we see the world only through our own lifespan, it can be overwhelming and daunting. But when we see that we are one link in a whole chain of God's history and the world's history and human history, it gives us an ability to realize that our life does matter, it does have significance and meaning and purpose, and yet we know that the world will live beyond us, giving us hope and resilience. Additionally, I think being able to see beyond ourselves gives us an ability to have awe and gratitude, to be thankful for each day's gifts and blessings, and for all that is good and right in the world, and appreciating the grandeur of the world around us, the beauty of the community that surrounds us, the gifts day in and day out that we get to appreciate. So I've been working with my spiritual director on a regular basis now for about 2 years, and I think of it like this. When I first started working with her, I didn't have a clear sense of my purpose. I wasn't thinking about my place in the greater scheme of things, and every time something bad happened, I was knocked down. I was on the ground trying to put myself back together. But as I have been intentionally trying to be healthier from a spiritual perspective, I'm finding that my grounding is becoming firmer. My spiritual director, Sean Collender Hogan, loves images, and so she asked me to come up with an image to explain what I was talking about, and this is the image I used. I said, I feel like I have stepped into a brand new sidewalk, and the cement was initially wet and moist, and I was able to put my feet in there, and over time, as I've been getting spiritually more healthy, the cement has been drying, and my feet are now just firmly gripped in the presence of God. And then fast forward a few months, I told her, the cement isn't just up to my ankles anymore, it's now up to my kneecaps. And it isn't in a captivating way where I feel frozen and locked. It feels like it's coming from a place of strong foundation and strength. I feel now like when hardships come my way, when grief comes my way, when I'm struggling with this or with that, instead of being knocked down onto the ground, I am being held firm by something much bigger than myself. And those big emotions that I experienced as a kid are becoming so much more regulated, and I truly believe it's because I am finding this healthier balance between body, mind, and spirit. But let me warn you all as I get into the how we grow spiritually. This is not a one-time achievement that you can just check off and say, okay, now you're on the path to wellness. Like eating well, like physical health, it has to be a part of daily habits and routines. It's not a one-time, I can listen to the lecture and now I'm going to be spiritually well mentality. So let me share with you 4 practices that I've come up with. In full disclosure, ChatGPT and I have come up with about what spiritual health practices look like in our time, in our remaining time together. All right, so first and foremost, I think reflection and meditation. And please note that even though I'm a Christian pastor, I'm trying to do this in a way where it's applicable to anyone, whether you are of a different faith tradition, whether you have no faith tradition. I think these 4 spiritual practices can still be applicable. So first, reflection and meditation. I'm going to do a why and then a how. So why I think reflection and meditation has to be first. I think those 2 practices help create a space for self-awareness, gratitude, and that connection to something beyond ourselves. And studies are showing that regular reflection and meditation, like I said earlier, it does help lower stress, it does build resilience, and it does help with emotional regulation. So how would you practice reflection and meditation? I'm going to throw out some question possibilities that you could answer at the end of each day. And maybe we'll spend a couple of seconds right now answering. Actually, no, I'm running out of time. What if you asked yourself at the end of each day, what gave me life today? Where did I see grace? And where did I struggle? What would those 3 questions do to help you just slow down, to reflect back, to open up space about those deep pieces of life? What gave me life today? Where did I see grace and where did I struggle? Another possibility for meditation would include something like Lectio Divina or sacred reading. What if each day you spent time, just a few minutes, reading a sacred text slowly and spending time on what it means for you in your life, what it meant at the time it was written, and how it applies in your own spiritual growth? And finally, for meditation and for reflection, I think journaling is so great. Pastor Gina and I are both journalers. We both do a lot of time writing to reflect on our faith and our struggles and our gratitude. If you're curious, there's a study by the Harvard Medical School that shows how great these practices are for you in your spiritual well-being. So meditation, also I think number 2, practicing gratitude and forgiveness. Practicing gratitude and forgiveness. I think it matters because it takes our mindset from what is abundant and what is lacking, from what is lacking and what is scarce to a place of abundance and realizing that we do have enough. We live in a culture that says we don't have enough. And there's this fear of, I need more. I need to be more secure. But God, I think, the divine, calls us to see the abundance in our world and to have gratitude for that. And forgiveness, we know, can be such a heavy emotional burden that we carry around with us. And so what does it look like to practice forgiveness each and every day? So how do you do that? One, gratitude lists. You may have seen there's actually gratitude apps now. There's lots of gratitude journals, things like that. What would happen if at the end of each day you wrote down 3 things you were grateful for from that day? Forgiveness, what would it look like to just, even if you can't say it to the person who hurt you, what if you said to yourself, so-and-so, I forgive you? Or you wrote a letter of forgiveness to that person, whether you sent it or not. There are practices to help us name where we have been hurt by others and then work toward forgiveness. So gratitude and forgiveness. Again, there's a study out of Berkeley University about how much practicing gratitude and forgiveness can lower your blood pressure, improve your sleep, and just overall enhance your happiness. Okay, so we've got meditation, we've got practicing gratitude and forgiveness. The third thing that I think matters in terms of really strengthening your spiritual health is engaging in a faith community of some kind and or practices of going to service organizations and volunteering. Why does it matter? We heard so much about how much loneliness impacts us, right? Loneliness is not good for our health, and the only way that we can overcome loneliness is by engaging with other humans. Now, let me tell you, engaging with other humans may lead directly to the need for forgiveness, but that's a whole nother issue. Humans can be messy, and working with other people can be very difficult, but there is power and strength in doing that work. And so when you come, and it's not just a Sunday morning thing or a Saturday thing or a Friday thing for our Muslim friends, it is a true community that goes beyond just a worship time. It's participating in small groups or days like a health fair. It's part of being a team. And then service orientation activities. It's going to the food pantry and volunteering or going on the mission trip and knowing that you're making a difference. And the blue zone that I referred to a long time ago was this study that revealed how much community-based spiritual wellness can improve longevity for us. So I got into the how there a little bit, and I want to close with the fourth one, and that is having a sense of purpose beyond your own self-interest. Having a purpose beyond yourself reduces stress, prevents burnout, and improves your overall satisfaction in life. And how do you practice that for your spiritual health? One, I think good questions again matter. And so you can ask, what gifts do you have? And how can you use them not for yourself, but for other people? How can your community be stronger because of your gifts? How can other people's lives be improved because of what you bring to the table? And then actually practicing them. Knowing it is half the battle, but then go and do. True purpose is found by helping other people in their circumstances. And that can be through leadership or advocacy or acts of kindness. I've thrown a lot out at you, and I have to say that this is still all a new growth area for me. But as I have been finding this new balance between physical, mental, and spiritual wellness, it has been a game changer for me. And I hope that this talk will at least spark your own interest in your own spiritual wellness journey. It has given me an incredible grounding about my big emotions, even what happens to the polar bears. My spiritual practices have grounded me in ways that I did not see coming, but I know today that it is well with my soul. So since others may not ask you, let me ask, how is it with your soul? Thanks so much for listening.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to Pastor Jess. What a pleasure to have her back and speaking about spiritual health. We all have some work to do in that, I know. My name is Devika Gill. I'm the preschool director here at First Methodist Church, and I wanted to offer my welcome as well. I know Pastor Gina welcomed you earlier. You should have, hopefully, some of you I don't think do, but you should have a program